Depend on it.
84 WHAS, Gary Gupton in for Tony Cruz this morning, and you're hearing in the news that they're trying to see if they can come up with enough evidence to give us some understanding about what happened to MH370. Aviation safety analyst Ken Jenkins joins us. And Ken, exactly how much evidence from the crash scene do we need to be able to recover to confidently say once and for all what happened to this flight?
Gary, good morning.
Good morning.
The evidence that's going to be needed is in terms of size and scope, will depend on what's actually found. You may only need a few items. You certainly would want to have the flight deck recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, which are going to be the two most difficult things to find given the width of the ocean and the depth that we're looking at, which in some cases are 4 miles deep. Being reported this morning are new French satellite images that reflect possibly 122 items that may be debris from missing Flight 370. The debris itself could also show some clues if there was a fire on board or a possible explosion as to what happened to the aircraft.
Now, from the long-term impact on Malaysian Airlines as a company, with this being in the news for this long, is such a mystery, can their brand recover from this seemingly endless reporting about this crash?
I believe it can. There have been airlines in the past within the United States that have had a number of accidents over a period of time, and we're not talking just one, but a number of accidents. It depends, in my opinion, on how well the airline responds to the families. And Malaysia Airlines has specially trained assistance team members called SAT, or Special Assistance Team, that are working with the families on a day-in, day-out basis. And their goal is to make the families as comfortable as possible with a safe place to stay, such as a family assistance center at a hotel, make sure that they have meals, access to grief counseling, and medical care if it's needed. But one of the problems that they're being faced with today, the Malaysian Airlines and the families, is getting timely, credible information from the government. And that's where you're starting to see a lot of frustration and anger from families. They don't feel like they've been receiving that from the Malaysian government.
From the standpoint of Malaysian Airlines, from a corporate standpoint, how do you think they've managed this situation?
I think they've done a good job in terms of mobilizing employees and doing the best they can. Their hands are somewhat tied as well because the information that they want to give to families, they have to get from the Malaysian government. And if the families are feeling that the government's not giving them the information, the employees are feeling similarly pinched, if you will, that it makes their job in trying to work with the families just as challenging.
Talking with Ken Jenkins, aviation safety analyst. Ken, with the understanding, at least as we have it now, that the pilots apparently, we think, turned off the beacon that would help us track this aircraft electronically. Mm-hmm. Moving forward, are we going to see governments or the FAA in some form try to create a fail-safe and a check and balance to take some of this responsibility or opportunity away from perhaps rogue pilots?
I think you will see at least that topic being explored. Again, it's going to depend in large part, I believe, how far this conversation goes to what happened to the plane. Mm-hmm. There are reasons why the captain or the co-pilot may have turned off the transponder. It may have been something as simple as checking the circuit breakers to pinpoint the location of a fire or smoke in the cockpit or somewhere on the plane. So there are valid reasons as to why it may have happened, but we've got to know what those reasons are before I think we take this further.
As you look to the next few days, and we would assume that at some point there's going to be a definitive decision that this investigation, this search is going to end, what will trigger that? Are we just going to continue having crews down there scouring the southern Indian Ocean until we find something, or will there be a finite date when they eventually just say it's an unsolved mystery?
I believe you're asking the million-dollar question at this point. Mm-hmm. Our reference point is Air France 447 back in 2009. And to use that as a reference point, when that plane crashed, it was on a flight path that everybody knew what it was, and within 5 days, debris was found of that particular event. We didn't know the flight path of this particular plane because it diverted. We're also looking at a width of ocean that is far wider than the Air France event. But what's key to remember is it took 2 years to find the flight deck recorder and cockpit voice recorder, and that search continued for 2 long years. and I think you'll see some form of search and recovery as long as it takes. And whether it's done by a government or a private enterprise, I believe you'll see the search continue until those boxes are found.
Ken Jenkins, thanks so much for joining us here on 84 WHAS.
Thank you, Gary. Bye-bye.